Hello, let's talk about how to pass the Security Plus exam. And we're talking about CompTIA's 2014 version, which is SY0-401. What I like to do is I like to break it down into 10 steps. The first step is to download and analyze the Security Plus objectives from the CompTIA website. This will show you what you might see on the exam. Let's go to their website now. You can learn more about the certifications that they have to offer, including the Security Plus. And you can also grab sample questions and the exam objectives. If we click on the exam objectives, we'll just have a quick form to fill out, your name and email and so on, and select the certification that you're interested in, Security Plus. Then just grab those exam objectives, and they'll show up in another tab. And you can download this as a PDF, and I highly recommend that you do, and print it out so that you can work off of it. This is going to be one of your main tools as you study. So this objectives document describes the test, and then it gives some other information such as the experience that a person should have before they decide to start studying for the test. It says a minimum of 2 years experience in IT administration with a focus on security, of course. But there's a lot of people that take it with less experience. If that's the case, you want to really study more at home and possibly in the classroom before you attempt the exam, because they kind of expect that they do expect that you have that 2 years experience. So there's a description of the exam, and then the exam is broken down into 6 domains. You've got network security, compliance and operational security, threats and vulnerabilities, application, data, and host security, access control and identity management, and finally, cryptography. Cryptography takes up the smallest amount of the exam, and it's really just covering the basics of cryptography. But you should definitely know as much as you can, and you want to study it hard, even though it's only 12% of the examination. Now, if we scroll down further here, first of all, we'll see some interesting information. CompTIA Authorized Materials Use Policy. CompTIA Certifications LLC is not affiliated with and does not authorize, endorse, or condone utilizing any content provided by unauthorized third-party training sites, aka brain dumps. I get a lot of questions from people by email and from students about brain dumps. Should I use them? Should I not use them? Well, if you read this policy, they don't really go for that. So there's pretty much your answer. CompTIA gives you the answer, and I don't have to. So there's other information here. If you look at the bottom, another interesting note, CompTIA is constantly reviewing the content of our exams and updating test questions to be sure our exams are current and the security of the questions is protected. So they can update the exam at any time they want, but the content, the concepts of the questions will be based on the objectives, and the objectives start on the next page. Look at all these objectives. Here's the first domain, 1.0, network security. It's broken down into subdomains and individual objectives. So for network security, implement security configuration parameters on network devices and other technologies, such as firewalls and routers, switches, and so on. What you want to do is you want to go through this list before you even start studying. Check mark each item that you think you know. For example, check mark it in black if you think you really know that item. If you're unsure, or if you don't know an item, or if there's any doubt, put a red check mark or a red X next to it so you know that you need to study that item in depth. And do that for the whole document. Go through all the objectives. There's a bunch of pages of these, so definitely go through them. Look, do you know all the ports? I guarantee that you better know the ports for the exam. And it goes beyond this list of ports as well. One thing you got to keep in mind is this is not a finite list of objectives. There may be other things that are connected. For example, port 88, Kerberos, is not listed here, but you should know that. You should know what Kerberos is and how it works. That's just one example. You've got wireless technologies. You've got extensible authentication protocol. And then you got the compliance and operational security. Okay, there's a ton of information here. So what you want to do is you want to go through the whole document. And again, checkmark what you know, and what you don't know, either checkmark it or red exit. Red checkmark it, red exit, and make sure that you are studying that in depth. When you're done with your studies, what you'll do is you'll go back to the beginning and start over again and make sure that you indeed know all those items that you red X'd or red checkmarked. So that's the first step. You want to make sure that you download the objectives. I recommend printing them out and carry them with you. You know, take them with you wherever you go and study those objectives. Make sure that you know each of these items. Use it as your main study guide. I should say your main study tool as you progress through your studies. You always want to refer back to this objectives document. I've spent 6 minutes talking about this because it's so important. People who do this, people who study this objectives document and utilize it in a correct fashion, they're the ones who are going to pass with the highest level of success. So use that objectives document. Step 2, decide on a study plan. How are you going to attack the Security Plus certification? Well, if you're new to security or if you're new to computers, I highly recommend that you take some type of classroom-based training, instructor-led training or ILT, a class with a good instructor and preferably some hands-on labs that you can go through as you're working in the class. This is very important for those of you that don't have the experience that CompTIA recommends. So I suggest a class, and it's going to be a lot better than just reading a study guide. Now, for some of you out there, you've already taken a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and you might have a focus on security, and that's great. You might be able to bypass the class. But for those of you who are new to computers or security in general, I would definitely recommend some sort of class to learn more about security in general, or something that's focused directly to the Security Plus. You can also do self-paced computer-based training, or CBTs, and you can buy these online. You can also watch videos on YouTube and so on, and that's a good method as well. It's a good secondary method if you're taking a class, so there's nothing wrong with that. But again, if you're new to security, I wouldn't rely on that solely as your study method. And then finally, the most common, the traditional study guide. That's usually the best way to go for the average person out there, especially if you have some experience in IT and with computers and security in general. So the traditional study guide is an excellent method. And again, of course, I'm going to highly recommend that because I wrote a study guide. But if you decide to go that route, and you probably will, I recommend more than one study guide, or at least more than one study method. For example, take a class and use a study guide, or watch some self-paced CBTs or videos and use a study guide, or get yourself 2 study guides. The idea here is you're getting content from 2 different sources. Maybe you could go even for 3 sources or more. You don't want to get too confused with it, but 2 sources is going to be good to give you a more well-balanced foundation of knowledge. And of course, I recommend my book. If we go to my website, you'll see I have an SY0-401 page, and I give the basics about the exam, a basic breakdown. You'll get a maximum of 90 questions, and chances are you'll get less than that, but a maximum of 90, and you get 90 minutes to finish the exam with a passing score of 750. So that's graded on a scale of 100 to 900. This is the CompTIA way. Mathematically, this is equal to answering about 80 or 81% correct. So you got to shoot for 81% correct. That's a lot. Keep in mind, there is a cost factor involved. $293 as of the recording of this video, and that could go up in the future, and I'm sure it will. The test is something that you want to study hard for. Whatever the cost is, you don't want to do it twice. You don't want to have to spend the time taking it twice. You don't want to have to pay for it twice. So use the objectives document. study from my book, study from multiple guides, take a class, do what you have to do so that you understand all the objectives in depth. Now, the bulk of the exam is multiple choice questions. You might pick from 4 possible answers or more, but there will be some performance-based questions as well. And those are simulations, drag and drops. You might be asked to do something within a simulated system or within a network map. I can't give too much more information than that, but if you understand the objectives and can do these things in a hands-on manner, you should be good with these. And right now it's somewhere around 10% of the exam are performance-based questions, and they're usually in the beginning. And there's a link here on my site if you want to learn more about performance-based questions from CompTIA. Also, you'll find links on the site here. You can download the objectives. I go over the domains, and I go over some frequently asked questions as well. And I show, the certificate that you get at the end and that type of thing. So anyways, the book that I offer is Security Plus Cert Guide, SY0-401. It's the 3rd edition. And this book has 17 chapters, tons of content, figures, tables, lots of information, key topics. It has been well received for the first 2 editions, and this 3rd edition is way better in my opinion. But again, don't just rely on my book solely. This may sound weird coming from the guy who wrote the book, but I always recommend going to multiple sources. It could be taking a class and reading this book. It could be CBTs or videos and this book, or 2 separate books. There's other good authors out there. I'm not going to dispute that. So you may want to use their book as well and kind of get a balance of information from multiple people. Step 3, create good study habits. It's not how hard you study, it's also how smart you study. So set aside multiple hours every day to study. Get that routine going. Get a schedule going where you study at the same time every day. You're going to need plenty of hours for this Security Plus. And be prepared to know the theory and the hands-on. It's important to know all the theory, all the facts, all the port numbers, all that good stuff. But it's possibly more important to know the hands-on. If you're trying to get the Security Plus certification, then you're probably trying to either get a job in IT or keep a job in IT. And without hands-on skills, most jobs are going to be pretty problematic. So you got to know the theory and the hands-on. Building on step 3, step 4, set up a home lab and test everything that you learn. Now, I don't expect you to get all the equipment that's possible out there. There's too many options. But you want to set up some type of home lab where you have at least a SOHO router or switch with built-in firewall capabilities, a couple computers, a couple mobile devices. If you can get some of this and connect it all together, you'll be able to do some of the hands-on that you need to understand the security better. I recommend at least 1 server and a couple client operating systems. You can run some of these virtually, but I kind of like to run the server as a physical box. It tends to be easier if you have a physical server. But a server, a couple clients, a SOHO router or 2 that has built-in firewall functionality, and a couple mobile devices. And that should help you to test everything that you learn. Get that home lab going. If you have to borrow components from people that you know or use a lab at a school, you got to do what you got to do. There's also simulations out there, but nothing beats the real thing. So to sound like a corny commercial, but really nothing does beat the real thing. So you want to test everything you learn with that hands-on lab and real computers, real components. Step 5, do practice questions until you're sick of them. My book has close to 800 questions. You want to get some quality practice questions to work with. Some people will email me and say, hey, I found these questions on the internet, and they could be of dubious value. You don't know how old those questions are, who wrote them, etc. So try to do as many practice questions from authorized sources as possible. And also we mentioned the sample questions at the CompTIA site that you can do. So that the practice questions give you a good indicator of whether you are ready for the exam or not. But be sure to not only understand the correct answer and why it's correct, but also understand why the incorrect answers are incorrect. You want to make sure that you do as many practice questions as you can, again, until you're sick of them. But don't try to memorize too much. You want to actually be able to think this out methodically and conceptually. This way, you'll be ready for any question that might come your way on the CompTIA Security Plus exam and in the field. Step 6, create a cheat sheet for final study. Now, this is not a real cheat sheet. You're not actually cheating, but what you're doing is you're taking the really important information, condensing it, and putting it in one piece of paper. And, what we're talking about here are protocols and their associated port numbers and steps that are involved, say, in the incident response process or vulnerability management processes. These types of things that can be a little difficult to memorize, it's good to write them out because that helps you to memorize and then study them more and more. And this is what I call a cheat sheet. You can use this up until you actually go into the testing center to take your exam. So create a little cheat sheet for final study. Step 7, read my article about great exam taking techniques. I've built these exam taking techniques for years now, and you can find them at this link here, and I'll post that underneath the video, wherever you might find the video, hopefully. But here's the link, great exam taking techniques, and there's some good things here. Pick a good time for the exam. Pick a time that'll be the least stressful for you. Don't overstudy the day before the exam. Get a good night's rest, eat a decent breakfast, and so on. Read through this article. It could help you a lot. I've had students go through these methods and do 100 to 200 points better on their exam. Sometimes you know the stuff, you know the concepts, but it's taking the test can be a bit stressful. So I give you some tips and tricks here to help you pass the exam. Step 8, build confidence. Along with those tips and tricks that help you to take the test, one of the most important things is confidence. If you don't have confidence, you could fail an exam even though you know the material. So you want to build confidence. First, you want to know it all. You can't be sure what questions you might get on the exam. So if you study my product and other people's products and use all the tools at your disposal, you'll be better prepared for the test. The more practice, the better. Know the theory, but also know the hands-on. So know it all. In addition, study the objectives. Again, if you haven't downloaded them, do it. Check mark each bullet as you're sure that you understand it. Red mark it if you don't get it, and go over them again and again. You'll also find an acronym list at the end of the objectives. Make sure you know those acronyms. Third, don't rush taking the exam. There probably isn't any rush. So don't schedule the exam until you're thoroughly prepared. Your scores on the practice exams should be a good indication of readiness. Go for 90% or higher on all the practice exams and make sure you're ready. Don't rush it. The fourth thing, mark questions and return to them. You can actually mark the questions when you're taking the real test. If you're a little confused about a question, perhaps a performance-based question that is ambiguous or difficult, you can skip it temporarily by marking it or flagging it, and then continue with the rest of the questions. You can return to those questions that you marked at the end. Just make sure that you leave yourself some time to complete those questions. If you really spend a lot of time on a question that's confusing, it can trip you up a little bit and can cause you some damage through the rest of the exam. So if anything's really confusing or ambiguous or difficult, mark it, and then you can go back to it later. And finally, trust in yourself. One of the best ways to build confidence is to trust in yourself. You've studied like a maniac. You know your stuff. You have to say to yourself, you can do this. You can say to yourself, I can do this. That's what you'd say. I can do this. So don't listen to what others say about the exam. Don't worry about what's going on in the world. Just focus in, create your own confidence, and tell yourself that you could do this. I know you can. Step 9. Now we actually do it. Schedule and take the exam. The Security Plus exam is administered by Pearson VUE. So you need to go to them to actually schedule it. Let's go to their website right now. If you go to Pearson VUE here, you'll see we have a lot of information. We can go to Test Taker Services. Then we're going to go down to Information Technology. Scroll down over here to CompTIA. And then from here, if you're a first-time test taker, you'll need to create an account with Pearson VUE. If you have taken tests before, you can sign in at the Pearson VUE site. And from here, you can locate a test center. You can schedule the exam. You can do it all online. You can also call them if you want. And one of the things I recommend is give yourself some time. Make sure that you have some availability, but don't schedule it till you're ready. And when you are ready, I would recommend scheduling it at least a couple days out, maybe a week out, so you have that additional time to study. But don't even schedule it till you're ready, because you have to pay for it at this point. A little tip, there's some discount vouchers out there. If you do a search in Google or wherever, you'll find all kinds of discount vouchers that can save you $10 or more on the Security Plus exam. And if you buy one of those, then you would plug that voucher number in here when you schedule the exam. Otherwise, when you schedule the exam with Pearson VUE, you need to pay by credit card. When you take the test, when you show up, by the way, show up early to avoid any stressful, lateness. Show up early, know where you're going, but you'll need 2 forms of ID, both signed, and 1 photo ID. Be prepared for them to take your picture and to get a signature and that kind of thing. You'll need your identification, and they won't let you take the test without it, and you'll forfeit your money. So you are warned. You need 2 forms of ID, both signed, one with at least one with a photo. So driver's license or passport or what have you. Finally, step 10, celebrate your victory. When you pass the exam, you want to celebrate because you've done so much work getting towards that goal. And, you got to feel a little bit of pride, and you have to take in some glory. The glory days are here when you celebrate the victory of passing the Security Plus exam. And I'm available at my website to help you to get to that goal. I'm here to help with questions you might have about your book that you've purchased, any questions about the content, the questions and answers in the book, videos, simulations. Feel free to send me a little email, and you can contact me at my website, www.davidlprowse.com. And you see that in the upper right corner there. So good luck to you. There's the 10 steps for the Security Plus. I hope this helps you in your pursuit at getting the certification. Good luck, and let me know how you do on the exams.